Joe, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited about this episode because a couple of reasons. I've gotten to know Joe quite a bit over the last couple of years, more so on phone calls than speaking face to face. I think this is our first time speaking face to face, so that's always good, right? Um, but I enjoy our conversations. I enjoy the point of view that you have from quite a bit different industry than what I operate in. And so I'm excited to kind of kick this off and see where this conversation goes. Why don't you start by providing just a little bit of a brief background? I always think it's helpful to kind of give context by providing brief background, but I think in this case, maybe it'll set the tone for the conversation a little bit more than maybe some of the others.
Yeah, sure. First off, thanks for having me on. I feel like I'm what's the phrase? Always a bridesmaid and bride when it comes to a podcast. I'm a frequent listener of a lot of stuff, but never a guest, so it's exciting. So we get to know each other a couple of years ago through your founder of the firm, Brian, who was a Wesleyan grad as well. So I took an interest in some real estate stuff. Well, I'm not in real estate, but we'll get to that. During the early part of COVID, I was living in Oklahoma City at the time, listened to Brian's podcast, and then we got connected through some college connections. So that's great. Born and raised in Oklahoma City. Lived in the same house with my grandparents. My other grandparents lived down the street, so heavy family influence. Ended up going out to the University of San Francisco for 1 year, transferred to Wesleyan in Connecticut, did basketball most spots, ended up getting a job right out of school in New York, and had a series of internships all on the digital media intersection of digital media and sports. So I interned for an NBA team, a regional sports network in Chicago, which those are largely a dying breed today. Beginning to see that. I thought I wanted to go to law school, was preparing in every way to go to law school, to the LSAT, worked at a firm in New York, and kind of stumbled into my current role, which I've been at now for over 6 years, and did not go to law school. And I think part of that is, you can frame the conversation as just finding a good mentor, being in the right industry at the right place, at the right time. But also, I think I've been very fortunate, lucky, blessed, whatever your adjective is to describe that. But also kind of making your own luck to an extent, taking those risks that you've talked about in a couple of your episodes, and taking advantage of opportunities that are presented, but recognizing that there's some luck along the way.
Yeah, for sure. So first, go back to the basketball thing. My biggest fear in injury wise is tearing my Achilles. You said you still play basketball. How do you protect that thing?
Yeah. So I missed 3 months of my junior year of high school, which is important for pretty all that. I had like my Achilles. If you went down the edge of my Achilles, it was here and then a big knot. And I never tore it, but I had all these little mini tears on the boot, and it was just brutal. And pretty much not all the way through college, just piecing it together. Since college, I've had wrist surgery, knee surgery, no Achilles surgery, but occasionally flares up. And things I do now that I should have done then is a lot more yoga and Pilates. And I don't think I've touched a weight over 50 pounds since college, just because my body feels better. So, but it's still, that's my community now in New York. My wife and I moved back here a year ago. And so kind of a bunch of guys that I play with and stay active, and we all do different things. But I don't think I missed this. I work at a blockchain focused venture fund. We're a small team, so I kind of took the coworker camaraderie necessarily that I used to have at my first couple jobs. There was a bunch of people my age. And so the basketball has maintained a pretty important just community aspect, in addition to get out there and up around a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to have that outlet. And I am learning, I think every day now, that yoga is more and more important as I get older, It's just, I try to work it in as much as possible. And as soon as I get away from it, I regret it. But besides the point, you mentioned you work in blockchain. Why don't you set the tone a little bit by describing what blockchain is for those that don't understand? They've heard it. They know that it's changing the world that we live in. It's evolving. It's becoming more important. What would be your brief kind of overview of what blockchain is?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you ask frankly, if you ask 10 different people, you might get 10 different answers. There's a technology forward approach, and people can get into protocols that are being built and whatnot. There's, I think, a more layman's approach. I'm not a technical person by trade. So that being said, the simplest way I'd kind of distill it is it is a technology stack on which we believe value transfer can be executed most efficiently. You think about the middlemen that are involved in every facet of today's, especially in your industry. You think about title and that alone. I think you're going to see in the lending industry that, the blockchain would allow for quite a bit of efficiencies within that. And I think if you look at this 6 or 7 years ago, take a step back, 15 years ago, when the Bitcoin white paper dropped, and in response to the financial crash, it was just a techie kind of anti-establishment, not fad, but obsession, frankly. And it's become more and more, and we can talk about how our firm operates a little bit. I think there's commercial applications that you're seeing built out now, and it's a few years ago it was still building out those protocols. So it was Bitcoin, Ethereum in the early 2010s to 2017. You had this boom of stuff that came to market, a lot of which is by the wayside now. But those that have stuck around, some of these other protocols, I think, are laying the foundation for real businesses to be built on top of. And you've seen the last 3 or 4 years, large companies that have been doing these kind of proof of concepts and pilot projects. And I believe that you're going to start to see some real businesses being built on the blockchain, not too dissimilar to where we were in the, you think about the internet, which preceded both of us, not to date us, but like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you had a long process to build out the base layer of that technology. And then you had what we think of today, the Googles, Ubers, Facebooks. And those are embedded in every part of our life. Whether you've got an Android or iOS, whatever you're using, it's like the App Store, we couldn't function without it. And all of that is built on top of the protocols of the internet. And you couldn't monetize those in the 80s and 90s. You couldn't explain them to your friend if you tried. And I think what we're finding in this world that we're in is you can monetize those to an extent. You can't own and operate those. And those are still hard to explain. It is quite technical. It's quite abstract because it's nothing you've ever done. But that being said, I think we are entering this phase now where you've got the businesses being built on that technology stack. So that the short way of saying it is it's a technology that enables real transfer of value in a material way. And we're at the forefront of that.
Yeah, you mentioned my industry and the potential impact. I, for one, cannot wait to see how it transformed the real estate industry, because it can be kind of slow to adapt, if you will. And I do think it's just kind of funny, I guess, that we're having this conversation today. I think when people hear the word blockchain, they think of Bitcoin. And as we're recording this, it won't get released for a couple of months, probably about 2 months. But as we're recording this, the halving is happening in the next 24 hours. So it's just kind of funny that
those 2 months, just to be clear.
Yeah, there could be. That's why we don't make any predictions or anything else. We don't put anyone on the spot, because the world is ever evolving. Last night there was a potential retaliation strike from Israel, and the world just changes every single day. But that's besides the fact. Why don't we talk about, just give a brief overview of blockchain ventures as well before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, what you guys are focused on and maybe how you came to be there.
Yeah, so the firm's been around since fourth quarter of 2017. So if you use Bitcoin as a proxy and you look at the price chart, that's when Bitcoin ran out from $3,000 to $20,000. Quickly, then came back down to 3,000. But we started in the fourth quarter of 2017. Our founder is a guy, Ken Seif, who had an entire career in early stage kind of tech retail. So he took his first company public in the early 90s. So apparel brand. and then had a series of businesses after that. He got to know the Ethereum founding team in 2013 when he was down at South by Southwest at the Texas Bitcoin Conference. He had an employee who asked to get paid in Bitcoin, and he was kind of like, to his credit, curious, but didn't know what it was at the time. And so he was at South by Southwest and said, I'll hop over and learn what this is. I have an employee asking about it. I should probably figure it out. That's where he got the Ethereum founding team. He became an early investor in Ethereum, and then that kind of got his initial interest in the space. And then he spun up a fund in 2017 when some of his earlier investors basically said, hey, let's pull some money in, make this a real thing. So we're on our third fund now, and we've got a handful of SPVs. We've raised a couple $100 million. We've actually, our first fund just became the second highest realizing fund in the last 25 years, which I'm really proud of. Combination of distributing cash, in-kind assets. I think just a testament to, we're only 7 years in to that fund, but just a testament to kind of being in the space, small understanding it, having that subject matter expertise. But at the same time, so Fen was the founder. I joined about 6 months after, in the summer of 2018, initially as just a chief of staff role, which I'm happy to talk about. I think those are some of the best roles out there. They're a little ambiguous, a little abstract. There's usually not like a clear description of what you're going to be doing, but I intended to do it for a year and then go to law school or, maybe work in a portfolio company. It's a testament to Ken's a great mentor. Ken's a great boss. We've built the team at the time very deliberately, very slowly. We operated very leanly. We were working out of his apartment in downtown New York, and I'd take the train down, and that was how we operated for the first 2 funds. And there was another partner who left shortly after I was there. Hired on 1 or 2 people along the way, and we were always kind of operating in that 2 to 4 person range. We're now a 10-person firm. And that has been a lot of those hires over the last 2 years. And the team has been very deliberately constructed with some people, I think, who have got great commercial chops, if you will, which this industry sorely needs. So these are people who have not only seen, but were pretty instrumental in kind of the Web 2.0 internet building. And so they've not only, these aren't just 30-year-old, and I'm putting myself in this category, these aren't just 30-year-old guys sitting in their basements who are investing in meme coins. These are people who have built real businesses, have scaled businesses, and know what it takes to see that through. And so, and these are people that Ken's worked with in particular for the last 25 years. So he's got that relationship. And that's largely on the investment side. And they're consultants, they're operators. And then we've really built up on the operations side where I sit, I think an institutional grade operational team. So we've got a CFO who's been in the business for 30 years at private credit funds, private equity. We've got a controller who's very similar to your background. Leads at KPMG, one of the big 4, and has seen a lot. And so we did not have that. And to your point in one of your podcasts, kind of experience trumps education. I was a history major, econ minor, and there was a period of time where I was doing, or at least kind of managing a lot of the accounting work and with our administrator on the outside. And thankfully, we've hired really, really good people who oversee that. And as you get bigger, and we're now a registered investment advisor. So what comes with that is you register with the SEC. There's all these rules you have to be mindful of. Ultimately, it's a good thing. It keeps us kind of within a framework and discipline. But we hired the team deliberately around that kind of the framework of needing to be a registered investment advisor, which you have to do when you hit a certain AUM, which we did in 2021. But then also where we're seeing the space going, kind of this commercial opportunity that I think there's a wedge which we're starting to make for ourselves, where tech first funds are they don't see the commercial opportunity necessarily, or they rely on us to execute it. So if they're an earlier check, they come to us and say, hey, these are the guys that can probably help you scale your business. And what we also saw was complete washing out of 2021, 2022, when non-blockchain funds came into the space trying to make a quick buck on FTX, which was a real black eye in the industry. And they're not coming back in, and they might have, a 20-year track record of really building commercial businesses, but they are not. And this goes to a point that I think whether you talk about risk or concentration of risk, it's a hard space to be in if you're just kind of a tourist. I think our team's been around the block now enough that it's a testament to Ken, who, how he's hired out a team in the operational side, that we're in a place to I think expand on that.
Yeah, I wish I had Ken's curiosity, as you called it.
Yeah.
No one likes to talk about their losses or their lack of win, maybe, but I will put myself on the spot here. I can remember coming out of college, taking my first CPA role, finding out about Bitcoin, digging into it a little bit and being like, I don't really know how to buy this.
Yeah.
And this was in 2014. I think it was, 100, 200, 300 bucks maybe at the time. Instead, I invested in an oil and gas company because I did my internship in the oil and gas world.
Yeah.
And if you remember, 2014, 2015 was very harsh on oil and gas. So instead of investing in Bitcoin or Tesla or Amazon, something, I invested. I did the opposite. So I'll put myself on the spot there. When did you first hear about blockchain? And the reason I ask this is because I think it's important. You kind of mentioned this whole like risk reward thing, right? And you jumped into an industry that not many have heard of, or at least not in 2018, right? And so you're taking a chance early in your career, especially when, like me, you were considering going to law school, right? That was the plan. And so when did you first hear about blockchain technology, and what about it steered you in the direction that, you went?
So I heard about it for the first time in college. It was my junior year, and there was a guy on the basketball team who was senior, and he was a math, physics, something or other major. I don't remember. And he was talking about Bitcoin, and I heard it, didn't think anything of it, but that was the first time I heard about it. And then I got my first job, and it was a group that covered a lot of tech media, so a lot of streaming rights deals, but everything was under a digital umbrella. But it's sports, tech media more generally. I knew I always wanted to be in the digital first space. And so around 15 months into that first job, they spun a blockchain group, which was, I don't even think there was a partner on it. Pretty sure it was like two associates who were early 30s, and they kind of just said, hey, we're getting enough inbound interest that we should have someone that we can throw a prospective client toward, and you two associates will do it. And I kind of got onto one or two of those and just learned about it generally. The opportunity with this firm, though, came about in a really about way, because I was interviewing with a separate consulting group that was all tech media based as a chief of staff to their chief revenue officer. He then directed me to my the now founder, Ken, at this firm, and said, hey, you really like you, but we think this other guy, Ken, could be an interesting, his firm could be interesting. First look. And so I kind of I interviewed, and then by interviewing got referred to another person who they knew was looking, and they were investors in the firm. So I met up, got a coffee with Ken. Another thing you talked about, kind of putting yourself out there. I was in hardcore coffee mode when I figured out I didn't want to go to law school necessarily. And so I knew I wanted to be in a digitally first opportunity. So this in streaming was big for the kind of the crash streamers. So I was looking at that. I was looking at consulting gigs. And then this blockchain opportunity popped up. But really what I was prioritizing was I wanted a small, lean operation and prioritize kind of direct access to the executive level at the time. So they fit all those. And then within my first couple months of starting, like I said, Bitcoin, we're not, just to be clear, we're not out here speculating on Bitcoin, but a lot of people just use it as a proxy for the bear market. Bitcoin went from 3 to 20,000 back down to like 4,000. And I think my parents were like, what have you got yourself into when I was 24 years old? So that was, and then, a year kind of just said that give me a year. I just gotta get organized. We gotta figure out like how to go out and raise the second fund while simultaneously managing some of the liquidity that we started to have as a result of these investments. We invest in pre-launch tokens. You invest in equity, convertible debt, you name it. So there's like a traditional venture market, but it's only S2 codes. There's a lot of stuff to figure out in that first year or two. And fast forward, 6 years later, and never went to law school, and still here.
Yeah, I never did either, and I thank God for that. We're just happy about it every day. The more I interact with attorneys, they are a special breed, and I am incredibly thankful for the ones that did do it, because I don't think I would have lasted very long had I gone down that path.
I learned how to read contracts and do all that. I'm the grandson of the year, so he was pulling up at Tate College, but it's never for me.
Yeah, for sure. So what was it like then, especially when you're looking at going into what is highly considered such a stable career, right? Same with accounting. What was it like kind of jumping into this industry that as you stated, in comparison to Bitcoin, you watched it go up from 20 to 4, and that was kind of broadly applied, right, to the rest of the industry as well. What were those early risks like?
Yeah, I think this is something I tell a lot of trying to do some form of mentorship with the lesson. As long as a little bit outreach from people who were 18, 19, 20, trying to figure out what they want to do for an internship, what they want to do the first job. And one piece of advice that I like to give is there's a time in your life that is more suitable for risk taking. Once you're married, if you decide to get married, settle down, and have kids, it's a lot harder to start taking risks when you've got just everything else to puzzle. And so, but it's also, and everyone's got a different position. This is something I try and part like. If you come out at 22 and you've got a bunch of student loans, you've got people you're taking care of, you're going to take risk. There's like the structural things that might make it hard. But if you're going to do it, being earlier in your career as the junior person is a great. And if you can find a role which empowers you, so that there's an element of mentorship, there's an element of being in the right industry. I think if you're going to do that at a printing press, probably not the right way to do it, but at a really high pace, usually it falls in the tech umbrella, certainly, then it's great doing it early and taking on as much as you can and not being pigeonholed by slavery. I am one who, like I said, history major, econ major, I didn't code anything. I don't think I could even use Excel whenever I graduated college. I really did not know at the time when I graduated college that you had to press equal sign in order to initiate COLA. And when I started, it was just a function of needing to learn quickly at this level. And so, and having a boss who empowers that, I think is really important. So the risk was, all right, I can go to this. I know I'm not kids. I'm not, I can pay my rent. And I had 2 roommates at the time, 24 years old, but I can pay my rent with my salary that I'm getting. And I'm going to learn more in 2 years because this person has empowered me to take that on than I could in go to law school. The opportunity cost of going back to school, in some cases, I think it's a really valuable thing. But I also think that hard skills, for example, I couldn't use Excel when I graduated, but I think there's something my dad always used to kind of preach. My dad was an English major and then went back to med school at 30. And I was born in his first year of medical school. And he and my mom proceeded to have 3 more kids. So 4 kids between first year of med school and his fellowship. So from 30 to 40. And, but as an English major, had to go back and take chemistry and all that in his 8 faults. You can learn hard skills. Right? You can learn how to use Excel. You can learn how to, you name it. You want to come back and learn coding So some people are inherently better at coding, but many people are in coding. But there's this concept of the three A's. I'm attributing this to my dad, but I'm sure he got it from someone else. And it's availability, affability, and ability in that order. And so are you willing to pick up the call? Are you willing to stay late at work, pick up the call, and just be available? Because guess what? If it's between you and three other people and they leave early and you're the one available, you're going to get more work. You're going to get more experience. Are you good to work with? Are you affable? What is your polite working with you? You can be you can be a real jerk, and people are just like, all right, I'd rather work with the person who's 5% less competent, but they're pleasant to work with. They work hard, and they're going to take accountability. I think the last one is ability. That with some sections, I don't want to go to a surgeon who is in the bottom quartile of ability, but they're a nice person and I can get into their schedule. So there's exceptions to that. But I think a lot will lead to like, are you on par in terms of your ability? But are you, can I get a hold of you? I'm not saying on Christmas morning I gotta be able to get a hold of you, but like, if you say that I'm a 9-to-5er and you can't call me after that, you'll find a different attorney who, when I'm trying to close a deal, is going to work with me within reason. So I think that for me was really kind of important in that risk assessment. It was like, all right, I can go take this job. If it flounders and fails within 2 years, I've at least met a mentor and someone who's been doing this for the last 25, 30 years at a time. He's got a great network. And if I bust my ass and work hard, I think I'll set myself up in a way to be fine. If I need to go back to school, I can figure that out. But so you talk about risk taking. I mentioned I think concentration within that risk is really important. Devote yourself to whether it's real estate, whether it's blockchain industry, devote yourself to that fully. And more often than not, the outcome might not be what you're looking for. You might not hit a lot, but you're going to learn something along the way that's going to tee you up to be a pretty productive employee. Thank you. Only until you're won't be for that place related to do it.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of different things there. The two questions I ask myself when evaluating risk are, first one is how hard would it be to get back, right? If you've got two different options and you're leaning towards the more risky one, how difficult would it be if things don't go the way that you wanted to get back to the other option? And then the second one, I try, and I wasn't always like this. I don't really know when it came about, but I started asking myself, which one would I regret more if I saw the other one through? Besides maybe focusing on concentration, what else does your process of evaluating risk, and this goes besides, taking a risk early on in an industry in your career, I mean, just across the board, right? As you're evaluating companies, what does your process of evaluating risk look like? And what advice would you have other than concentration to those that are listening?
Yeah, we've got a really good investment team who they analyze
set the tone.
They set the tone. Yeah. So I think, and I'll answer you two parts. I think the concentration point's twofold. So there's concentration in context of risk concentration, like putting your eggs in the basket. So you say, hey, we're gonna double down this, and we put X million into this company, and they've got traction. We're gonna double down. We've got high conviction, and we're concentrating on risk. But that also, I'm saying in a professional sense, I think there's an element of doing that in your personal life, like by the nature of saying in your right, you're concentrating your personal life with a person. You're some people might view that as risky, some people might not. There's also the other meaning of concentration that I think is interesting, which is like the literal I am solely focused on a topic. And so I mentioned earlier, I think you had these kind of tourists who came into our industry in 2021. A lot of them good people, smart people, but they weren't concentrated on this industry for the years prior. They came in and they had, this would have been not cheap. They'd raised a bunch of money and it was like, sure, we'll go into this deal at some crazy valuation, but they weren't they hadn't seen the trends come through. They weren't concentrated or focused on this highly volatile risk asset, and it's too different. So I think of concentration in those two ways. There's literally all the eggs in the basket. You are concentrating in risk, but there's also the being diligent and solely focused on something. And I mentioned earlier in the context of like a surgeon. If I'm going to a surgeon he goes that he or she goes, yeah, I can operate on anything pretty well. Well, if I got a really discrete Achilles injury that needs surgery, like I want to go to the person who solely specializes in, concentrates in Achilles surgeries. So in terms of our business, this is something that then our founder starts with him and permeates. But you solely invest in the blockchain, and you get deals all the time. And if it doesn't pass that standard, so if someone comes up and says, "Hey, we're gonna like issue a token and do all this," and we invest in. There's all different instruments. There's tokens, safes, SaaS, convertible debt, equity. And we can say, great, but does it need a blockchain? And our investment team is really smart about how they go through that. There's prongs and pillars within that. But one of the questions we ask is, does it need that underlying set of technology, the blockchain, to touch it? And if it doesn't, then it's pass. And so focusing and concentrating that risk, and you mentioned it, it's in that episode I was listening to, it becomes less of maybe I'm paraphrasing, but you have a risk concentration. If you devote yourself wholly and you are myopically focused on it and you become an expert in it, you in a way almost hedge your risk, right? Like you figured out within the risk bucket where the winners are, and you're gonna take some sleepy people away. And we are not new to that in our industry by any means. But you can't do that as a true risk, if you will. You're going to get, if you're a multifamily investor and you dive into office because the market went down 10%, you think you're making a savvy move. And this is outside of my comfort zone, so correct me if I'm wrong, but every time I look at something in Chicago, San Francisco, New York, office is getting killed. And if you try to make a quick buck because you're a multifamily investor and get into office, you're probably, getting your lunch handed to you. So it's interesting. And I think about risk and concentration and risk and focus in those parameters.
Yeah, if anyone, and you mentioned this a little bit, if anyone acts like they're immune to it, you may want to dive in deeper.
Exactly.
That's one of my top red flags.
Yeah.
You've mentioned, I'm going to pivot a little bit here. You've mentioned the role of a mentor a couple of different times. And I want to look at this through some lenses, right? First, early in your career, finding someone that can kind of steer you along and give you that experience. Secondly, since this podcast is geared towards small business owners and entrepreneurs, finding someone who is at a level that you want to achieve so that they can kind of guide you to that point. And then third, you mentioned that you provide mentorship to the Wesleyan basketball team, which I think is absolutely incredible because Brian has talked about this. You mentioned Brian Adams at the beginning of the episode. Brian has talked about this through the lens of lacrosse, and Wesleyan, I think, has just an incredible reputation for providing that level of mentorship and guidance to their students that I personally, maybe it's just because I went to an SEC school, I've not seen that, in other universities. So shout out to them there. But through those three lenses, kind of what are your main points or advice or takeaways from this word mentorship?
Yeah, and I'll preface it with, our football games are about 300 people, our basketball games are about, 200 people in the playoffs. So, but it was all, we always looked at SEC sporting events. We're like, oh, people. On the mentorship front, though, I think the first real mentor that I think about is when I interned my junior year of college, going into my senior year. and it was a guy who has since passed, and he was on a business side, and he hung his hat on hospitality. And I read a book called "Setting the Table" by Danny Meyer. That was my homework for the first month of my internship. Basically, the goal was, how do we the summer project, effectively, of my internship was becoming the most fan-centric organization in all of professional sports. That's like, and I mean, he would say that, and it was repetitive, and he basically instilled it in all the way down to the intern level. He ended up passing away in February of 2017, I think, and relatively young, mid-50s. But he'd been doing this for 35 years at that point, and had bounced around from a couple teams earlier, but had been with the same organization for 20 plus years. And his ability to, like, he not only talked the talk to walk the walk, and it was not only when we're at a game, 82 games, 40 more at home, you got the playoffs, you got preseason, you have community involvement that they really emphasize with this organization. And it wasn't just lip service. It was within the walls of the office that summer. You came in, and when I started, there was like no details left unturned. And that left an impression, because I think about that's something that you might take for granted when you go to a professional sporting event. They've got a halftime show. They've got t-shirt cannons going. Like, they want you to feel special. But I also think that when you are in a sales role, you're fundraising. When you guys go out and raise for a new Knicks medical facility in Memphis, I don't know what you guys are talking about necessarily, but you put things together in a digestible way. You made it just available to get on the call. You have a kind of an approach of hospitality that extends in a restaurant, a professional event, or a concert. I think about that in our business. We have investors, whether they're not even a relatively small check, or they're a big check. No person, we are stewards of their capital, and no person is not worthy of picking up the phone and taking time, because that's, it might be on a proportional basis about the same. $100,000 check versus a $10 million check. It means potentially the same to both people, and we should treat it as that. And so I think I learned that from my first mentor. I didn't realize at the time, because we weren't raising millions of dollars necessarily or deploying that, but just that the component of hospitality, I think, is incredibly important, and finding that early in your career can be really beneficial. In fact, I looked for that at every stop along the way after that. So my first job, finding younger associates at my first firm in the 28 to 35 range. I would encourage a lot of people to do that. Find the people who are where you want to be in 10 years. You're 22, you're going out your first job. Find the people who are in their 50s in the C-suite. A lot of times they just, in fact, they don't have the time, or they've got families and it's not out of mind. It is great if they're willing to do it, but find the people who are where you want to be in 10 years. A lot of times they're willing to do it. A lot of times people just try and bypass the office and go straight to the top person. But I think finding that cohort is really important. And then just to bring it full circle, when I got to my current role, when you're working with 2 or 3 people, it's just kind of an intimate setting, and you pick up things. Finding someone who's humble enough to take the time to make sure your development is not put to the wayside. And then where we've been the last couple of years, we hired a new COO, and I report directly to him. But I also will do some stuff for our founders still, just given the historical context and relationship. And that place has been incredible. And his name's John, and he helped take our founders' first company public in the 90s, and they've used our outside counsel, so I've known him for 6 years before. So there's a basis for the mentorship and the collegial relationship. But I had any phone along those ways, people I've indicated, I did go to, and it's all it doesn't happen from day one. It's a two-way street. They have to be willing to mentor. You have to be willing to take them up on that mentorship. You have to be a good listener. But it's a two-way street, and you have to foster that. It's not going to happen from day one. And if you never say, "Hey, can you grab a cup of coffee? Can you just sit down and talk about this deal that we're doing?" I think the proactive approach to mentorship as a mentee is really important. And then you get to a place where it's really important to pay it forward and pay it back. I would be doing a disservice if some you get an email once a month, once a quarter from someone from Wesleyan that or from my high school that says, "Hey, I found this," or "Coach said I should reach out to you." If I leave one read, or if I don't take the time to say, "Hey, next time you're in New York City, let's get coffee," like, what am I doing? That there's nothing that I'm doing that's too important that I can't make that time. So I think that's an important life lesson that I've been fortunate enough to actually to, and I want to certainly pay forward. And it's a testament, obviously, was some kudos there. I think that wasn't always the case. Early on in my time to transfer there in 2013, I don't think that infrastructure was in place. And they had hired a new AD. They've got some new, the new relatively new coaching staffs in some instances. And they eliminated a priority because not to get too far in the weeds, NESTEC Athletics, that's the conference up there, but there's other schools, Amherst, Williams, some of these others, and they've got like a whole program built out, and they do all these meet and greets, and people, it's like a community within itself. And I don't think that necessarily was there early on in my time, and they've really made it a point. And it's not just the basketball team. I think Brian's certainly done that at lacrosse and other teams. And I think the schools made it a priority, and at least in my experience. So I wish when we were a school 2,800, 3,000 kids, it's a little bit easier to manage than a massive 40,000 person school. But that the mentorship in my life has been really, really.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I just kind of just sat there and listened to it for a little bit, and I was thinking about, couldn't help but think about my experience, and I loved going to a bigger school, and I'll relate it back to that at first. Loved going to a bigger school, wouldn't trade, those big football games for anything. Though looking back now, that piece I think is super crucial, as you said. Would have loved to have had a little bit more maybe outreach from those that have been through the Ole Miss program prior, especially for such a prestigious accounting school that they have. But I did love your point about it just being a general life lesson and paying it forward. I think those are all incredibly important points. Let's pivot again a little bit and talk about running lean operations. So it sounds like we have this in common. We're a team of what used to be 10, we're down to 7. Just because people are going out and doing their own thing. We've had 2 that have left to start their own business, and we'd love that. It's one of the things that we talk about internally is, it's like our favorite thing when someone comes to us and said, "Hey, thank you for the last 2-3 years. It's been great. Now I'm going to take what you taught me, relating it back to mentorship, and go do my own thing." But it sounds like you're lean operations as well. Let's maybe dive into that. Maybe what are some key strategies for maintaining those lean operations and not getting out over your skis, right? Because there is a give and take there, and you don't want to sacrifice some of the other aspects like innovation by trying to remain lean. So what's that been like from your experience?
Yeah, I think especially on the operational front, the blockchain venture fund is it's inherently just different than other maybe early stage firms or small companies. You're managing in some cases tokens, and there's a security component to that. There's operational reporting that you have to manage, and all of those also have a cost. And so when you want to run lean, you got to balance the operational logistics of running lean, but also a consideration that is like, all right, well, this could take out half of our operating budget by doing something that maybe one person couldn't do, and it stretches them a little bit thin, but it allows us to go out and deploy more capital and product money into exciting investments, which ultimately is where we make our money there. So I think there's a give and take with running lean, and we did it for as long as we could, as leanly as we could, while still maintaining kind of operational. I would say now we're on a place of operational lifestyles. At the time, it was like we did what we needed to do in order to keep the business going, and it was more than passive. But it's a deliberate thing. I think whether it's hiring or working with a new vendor or terminating those relationships. So I think there's roles in which you bring, especially in an operations role. I think there's a trust level. You talk about working with banking relationships, you work with you're handling the assets, you're a lot of times working with personal information of investors. And so having that trust is important. And this goes back to the soft skills component. It's kind of like table stakes, right? If you're going to go out and hire a controller, a CFO, a chief legal, they've done their homework, if you will. They've passed the CPA, they've gone to law school, whatever. I operate in the director of operations role where I didn't go to law school. I didn't take serious accounting or finance classes, but there's a reliance on those soft skills, which is having the curiosity, I think, to take it on. I think maybe I turned this a little bit to having played team sports, so you got to bring people together. So you're talking about someone's talking about point A and talking about point B. They don't realize that they're actually somewhere in between. You got to bring them together, and that's how we can progress and forward. And so I think every team's different. When you run leanly, it's the inherent people have those hard skills. It's can you bring these soft skills together in a way that allow that lean team to punch above its weight? Can you do as a team of 3 or 4? Can you do what a team of 10 might be able to do because you complement each other well? You've got the right systems in place that you're not being bogged down by running 3 systems in parallel. That's one thing we've seen from when I talk to people, like they're running 3 separate systems, paying 6 figures to do it, and they don't realize that it's conflicting and they've got it all already in one. And so being aware of what that is it's not easy to run a lean team, but I think a lot of it is does that team have the soft skills to complement each other? And you have the wherewithal to maybe raise your hand and say, hey, I'm deficient here. I need a hand. And a good team will say, great, I can pick that up because that's my subject matter expertise. I'll pick you up. I think that is an operationally specific thing. So I think our investment team is just a different calculus. Some people have different backgrounds, and they do B2B, they do B2C, they do consumer. They've got a consumer focus, and they don't run their own lane, and they complement each other. But if the operational side of the house is not humming, you really can't run bill pay, payroll. You can't make investments. You've got to have controls in place, and if that's not done correctly, then your business will cease to. You can have the greatest investment team, but you're not going to be able to get anything done. So I think we built that slowly. We're still lean, given how where we are relative to our size, but doing so deliberately is really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier. I think one of the things that gets overlooked in terms of a lean team is, well, then how do you take care of those responsibilities? And in our case, we outsource a lot, right? So we have a couple of attorneys that are almost solely based on our stuff. I mean, they're independent through a firm, but they're almost solely based on things that we do. Our CPAs are great. We have an incredible relationship with our bankers. We have 28 independent property managers specific to the property. They're just not paid through our payroll. And then same with the accounting teams that, we go and meet with and build the trust that you were talking about. I think, so you mentioned this point about operational excellence, and I think your last point that you included in kind of our talking points for the episode relates back to this, and it's kind of where I want to move to next and potentially maybe end, depending on how the conversation goes, is this whole idea of move fast and break things. Because I do think that's important to find, I like to relate things back to team sports because I also played team sports, right? It's like find those points where you can really push your limits, right? And I think that's relatable. But let's maybe talk about it for a minute and maybe define your approach there.
not to move fast and break things.
Yeah.
No. That's what, I think there is, inherently our business is moving fast. We're not liquid traders, but we have liquid underlying assets that we hold now as a result of investments made 5 or 6 years ago. And so the market moves fast, especially fast, especially with there are macro events that are indicating that there could be a habit and something built in, and that we're not even holding material amounts of Bitcoin to affect the market. So inherently things move fast. We also have to be competitive for deals. So sometimes in a hot market, you've got to be able to move fast and take advantage of those. So that's like generally just, I think our business moves pretty fast. And then I think if you look at it, there's usually factions within a team. Some people who are more comfortable moving fast. And then you have to balance people who aren't self moving fast. And there's probably some stereotypes within there. Right? There's talk to some attorneys who might say, no, we gotta go through 14 rounds of quality check on this document and make sure that it's buttoned out. I think in a small team, in an industry, you have to move fast. We've, again, it goes back to a testament of how the team's been built and hired. Even those stereotypical, and I probably would fall on the other side of, okay, let's light our these things a little bit and make sure that like every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And I had to kind of train myself out of that to an extent. But you lay the groundwork early. And so making sure that you've got a solid foundation. So when you do have to move fast, you can rely on that solid foundation. So it feels like you can move fast and break things, but if the foundation's solid, the foundation isn't going to crumble. So you might break a window pane along the way to get where you need to go, but you can patch that up and put in a new window. And if you've got a little leak, you can patch that up. And I think we've gotten deals. We've made really, I mentioned earlier, as of 2 months ago, this is according to data that we've had on Prequen, we are the second highest utilizing venture fund in the last 25 years. And in this business, there's a lot of, I've talked to a couple endowment institutional types, and they've got existing relationships, other funds, where they're marked up crazy amounts, but those firms haven't figured out how to utilize those underlying investments. They've held on to it. You fall in love with an investment, you hold on to it for too long. You watch it go down to zero, whatever. Part of the discipline in our firm, and it ties into moving fast and breaking things. But we're also just moving fast. You've got to capitalize on opportunities. You got to have conviction in that. And if the foundation is solid, which it's become more and more solid with the institutional and operational excellence that I think we've started implementing over the last 2 years, it makes moving fast less stressful. And there are times when you make a decision, I think, as a team, and you say, I think I've got conviction of this is the right thing. It's going to pay off. But there could be second-order consequences or effects in 6 months that we don't realize. And the foundation's solid. You sleep better at night. Okay, I mean, we did this, but and we thought about several different outcomes, good and bad, and what those second-order effects could be. With the foundation's good. You sleep better at night, knowing that moving fast and hopefully not breaking anything. But you also, I don't think you can let the breaking things hold you back. It's just more about the reminder to make sure the foundation is solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot with one more question, if you're up for it.
Okay.
What are you most excited about right now in the blockchain space in terms of disrupting the world as we know it?
I think so. It's the short answer is I'm excited that I can actually start to explain this to like my haircuts in a way that's functional. But what I mean by that, it's like I mentioned a little bit in the episode, there are actual businesses that I think you're going to start to see being built on the blockchain. And the blockchain is a general term. I think there's certain protocols that you're going to start to see the fruits really were in real businesses being built of, and companies that we think of today that are quietly filing patents and have been doing so, and kind of R&D, and I think there's real traction there to have this embedded in our everyday lives, and in a way that you will never have to interact with. So historically, like opening a wallet, you mentioned in 2014, the prospect of figuring out how to open a wallet, secure a wallet, buy some Bitcoin. You have to buy the Bitcoin in cash, or do you have to get like a stable coin and then convert it into Bitcoin? And if there's slippage on a exchange in Europe versus America, like, are you getting screwed on price? A lot of that stuff, and that's existed, I mean, even a few years ago. And I think that the prospect of having real, tangible commercial businesses that are utilizing this technology, that I can go to my grandparents and say, "Oh yeah, like, you don't even have to know what's going on in the back end. This is utilizing the technology that you don't understand, but you don't have to interact with it." So I think there's real talent that's coming over the last few years, and whether it's B2B, B2C, that focus line, and then also like the UI UX around it is exciting. And I'm 30. I just turned 30, and I think it's gonna be a part of my day to day for as long as I live. Myself, the internet. I'd be speaking on behalf of you, but I think we both read an NIM dial-up in 2002, 2003. I was like 9 years old. My older cousins were like, "Oh, you gotta get on that since forever." And then before you know it, when I freshman year of college in San Francisco, that's when Lyft was starting, and the iPhone, you were freaked out by like plugging in your debit card to go take a ride a mile across the city with a pink mustache and a Lyft bar.
Yeah.
And now, I fly out of New York and I schedule the night before. I don't even think about it. I've got loyalty points for my Delta card that plug into my Lyft account and my Uber account. I land and I dial up and do the same thing, and then I get points back so I go book my next trip. Like, it's part of our culture and part of our everyday life. And I think the blockchain will be there. It feels like it's taking a long time, but then I have to remind myself I've only been doing this for 6 years and I'm still only 30. And it feels like it's gone a long way even in that time.
Yeah, so I lied. I do have one more question for you.
Okay.
And nobody hold Joe to this. Again, who knows where the world goes, but you've compared it a couple of times, the blockchain being, you've compared it a couple of times to the internet and the whole like building phase of the 70s, 80s, 90s before we saw what you and I would recognize as the internet today. Where in that life cycle would you compare blockchain at right now?
Yes, the timing is it's a good timing of the question in terms of the timing of blockchain. I think, because we were talking about this, I think yesterday one of our partners does a much better job of articulating this, so I'll do my best. But in any of these technology life cycles, there's a handful of stages, and I'm gonna talk about one stage and I'll also give a stage each where we are. But I think there's the foundational layer. So we talk about the internet. It's took decades to build out computing, and then to have the infrastructure to build voice over IP, HTML, HTTPS, this protocols all on top of it, and then relatively quickly in the mid 2010s, 2010s, it all came to life. And so the behemoth that became Google and the other applications like Ubers and Lyfts and Facebook and social networking happened pretty quickly once that infrastructure was built. So I think in the blockchain world, Bitcoin, I think that this is the fourth halving of Bitcoin, and it's 15th, and that's like ancient technology in the grand scheme of the blockchain, and that's the protocol of that is the holy grail of protocols. If you ask people in the blockchain, and there's Ethereum that's you kind of have a decentralized computing, you have those other things that are being built. So I think a lot of that was made. They have a sufficient cash reserve now to withstand, I think, a long drought. So a lot of those companies are sitting on tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of runway, and they can build a moat, and they can bringing really creative and interesting development to those protocols. And I think similar to the internet, when those businesses start to turn up quickly, we're now at a place where the infrastructure is there, and it's there in part because the internet it had the internet on which to build, and so I think we're in the could say in baseball terms, maybe you're in like the seventh or eighth inning of the foundational layer. You've got most of the protocols, I think, that are going to be winners are there. You've got Bitcoin, Ethereum, they call Solana, Polkadot, Foundry. There's all these protocols out there, and they've got cash reserves at their back, and so we call that seventh or eighth inning. And I think we're still pretty early in the commercial application phase, which is a really exciting phase because that's the phase where you can actually explain to people and kind of tangible and see it, and as a user or as a consumer, it's exciting.
Man, I appreciate it. Always enjoy catching up and our conversations, and I love to see the success that you were talking about earlier. And I think your experience is evident in this conversation and all the ones that we have. So thank you for coming on and sharing and letting me record it and share it with people. And I can't wait to catch up soon.
Cool. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.